Okay, from
Can I get the light?
yesterday,
I think you want to bite after that.
from yesterday, what is it, what do cnidarians have in common? So think about that for just a moment, because when you look at this, one of the things that we had talked about is, doesn't it say something like the radiate animals? Yes. So what was one aspect that we had said about that yesterday? We had talked about when munitions might fall down.
They can sting you from all directions.
Right. So when you put those two concepts together, and we'd want to say envenomate because they've got tentacles that exist, you could say, in a circle. So when it radiates, it's going outwards. So in this case, they all have a type of radial symmetry to where we're talking about a circle. And then they have tentacles that produce venom, and those cells are called what, possibly?
They could be called,
So what are these?
Organelles. Stinging organelles.
Okay, so in other words, we're talking about different types of cells. Now you can say stinging and venomation is probably a better way of looking at that, but that's what the author has down is stinging organelles. So they all have radial symmetry, they all have tentacles, and they all produce venom then. So one of the things we talked about was a symbiotic relationship, and what might that be?
clownfish and what's the other one?
It's one where he has a hard time saying a sea anemone. Okay? In other words, they benefit from each other. So what is in it for the clownfish? So I doubt I doubt any type of predator is really going to want to attack this or try to grab this fish when it's inside a sea anemone. So I would be led to believe that in that case where Disney's saying that with Finding Nemo, that these animals build up a tolerance to this venom. And that is certainly possible. There's one of the things that we'll find out when we discuss venom in different types of creatures is that there are species of squirrels, ground squirrels, that can get attacked by rattlesnakes and then not have an effect on them. It's not that they're immune to them, it's just that they can tolerate it. So that would have to be, you could say, a type of evolution that occurs. That's certainly possible. I think you could say the same thing would exist with these clownfish. So then what's in it for the sea anemones? So it's protection for the clownfish. What did the sea anemone get? Yeah, they'll kind of keep the surface actually clean. Keep the house clean. Okay, the different classes we talked about. Okay, so here's our symbiotic relationship. So what do you suppose this means? No terrestrial regions.
Not on land.
Yeah, these are all aquatic animals. You do not find these on land, of course. Okay. So when we talk about dimorphism, it just means an animal that's going to go through a different type of life cycle. Flies do this. Okay? So right now in the fall when, and I think it's more common when manure is up on cement, but when you break open that manure pile, you see lots of little white little things moving. Anyone know what those are?
Maggots.
Those are tiny maggots. Eventually, they go through a life cycle. They're not going to exist as a maggot their entire life cycle. They'll actually change into flies. Okay? That is a concept of dimorphism. They're not the only animals that do that. We could say,
Butterflies.
you could say butterflies, What about tadpoles? Tadpoles will lose their tail and then turn into frogs. So it's not just unique to this type of phylum, but it does happen in invertebrates then as well. So what we see happening here is this process of dimorphism occurs with an animal that we call a hydra. Okay? And it resembles that of a sea anemone. But what happens when it goes through this dimorphism, it more so resembles that of a jellyfish. And as you can see, that's more so adapted for this type of free swimming existence, because some of these animals are also sessile, which means what?
They don't move.
That's these animals. These animals are sessile, just like that of the sponges. In other words, again, as you would guess, they do not move. Okay, so then moving forward. So what you have to think about, yes, these are all in the same phylum, but this class that we're talking about right now is Hydrozoa. Those are the animals that go through dimorphism. And not the only ones, but I think it's more so associated with that of the hydrozoans. So when you think of a jellyfish, because we know that these resemble jellyfish because they are free-swimming individuals. So in other words, when you picture opening up an umbrella, what you would see then is something like this. Okay? And then what would these be hanging down from this animal? What's hanging down on here? It's a characteristic that this phylum has in common. Yeah, these are tentacles. And then on these tentacles, I just typically put these on as maybe bumps of some sort, because I think it's just easier to say that or visualize that. Because you can't really see, these are called nematocysts, because inside of these are cnidocytes. And what's the function of cnidocytes then? It's correlated with that, yes. Because remember, cnidocytes are cells. Cells can't do the envenomating or stinging. It has to be something on the tentacles. So if this entire structure then is a tentacle, these bumps here are called nematocysts, and that's probably one of your vocab terms. And inside of these blue structures, they're filled with cnidocytes. And then again, those function of those cnidocytes is going to be to produce venom. I'm sorry, what did you say over there?
I said they produce poison.
Yeah, they produce the venom. Inside of these nematocysts are cnidocytes that actually produce that type of venom, for instance. Now, one of the things that we're going to see is when you think of jellyfish, are they mobile or immobile? Yeah, so they can move. So that must mean that we're going to see something that we would call a hallmark of evolution. And what that means then is as follows. It's probably coming up here pretty soon. Two directions. I don't think we've talked about it yet, but it should say something like this is a hallmark of evolution, because now we see animals that can actually move. So we're going to put together some of these terms here. If you had to go see a specialist known as a gastroenterologist, do you possibly know what that might be? What part of the human body would that doctor possibly specialize in? Right. Whether it's something that has to deal with digestion. Okay? So then, what about the dermis then? Dermis just means, that's not the first time that we've seen that. Because when we're looking at these tiny pores that go inside of a sponge, what's the difference between the ostia and the dermal ostia? One, we could say, goes all the way through. The other one is just found where? Yeah, so at the surface. It's the opening, but it's up at near the surface. So in this case, the gastrodermis, this is going to be a type of sheath or skin that's really the entire portion of the jellyfish, but they also have what's called the gastrovascular cavity, which is going to deal with that of digestion. Okay. Let's see here. I think, are we still writing here? Yeah. Okay. I just want to go forward for just a moment, and then, okay, so we can come back. So if you transmit a message, what would that mean to you? And we have different types of transmitting messages. We could say on your computer, you're sitting here typing, and it's over to Hulk hands over there. So you're sending a message from here to over here. The idea behind this is when you transmit something, you're sending a message. So in this case, okay, this transmitter is sending a message through what portion of the body system? What would that mean there? Neuro. What would a neurologist specialize in the human body? Could be the brain, it could be the spinal cord, it could be anything dealing with the nervous system. So what we see here then, okay, a neurotransmitter then, a lot of this structure that we see inside of here, there has to be an oral cavity here, okay? So within this oral cavity, that's where prey items, probably fish of some sort, will go inside this mouth. And then inside of here, we've got this, we'll just say, I'm going to abbreviate, gastrovascular cavity. Okay? So then these neurotransmitters are at the base of this. If this is the gastrovascular cavity, at the base then means the bottom here. I guess it wouldn't cover the mouth and it wouldn't be able to eat. But what we see happening here, these neurotransmitters go around in a circle. So if this is a side view, what would this look like from the top? If you were, okay, so keep in mind, this is a side view. What might it look like from the top? Well, it just means you're looking at it from the top. So, in other words, what that means is you're taking this and turning it sideways, okay? So if we took this and we're looking at it from the side, what would we see? Do you think? Not quite the same. A similar thing, yes. Because what would this really, this is an arc, that's true, but when you're looking down from the top, it's going to be a circle. That's right. So this is a top view now. Okay. So then this zigzag line that we see here, it really doesn't say where this neurotransmitter starts, where it stops. We're just using this as an example right here. So this neurotransmitter then travels, we could say, in two directions then. And then once it reaches the other side, it terminates. What might the function of a neurotransmitter be? For human terms and mammals, fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, spiders, scorpions, a neurotransmitter must be sent to stimulate something.
It tells like our muscles.
Right. So it's not very complex muscles, but you could say there's a rudimentary type of form of muscles in here because we already established that jellyfish, they're not stationary. They swim. So this neurotransmitter then that's going in both directions causes that jellyfish to contract. Like I said, it's not a very complex movement like this. Just flutter like this. So, which might be just enough to allow that animal to move. Of course, some animals can move quite quick. You're probably not going to outswim a box jellyfish. I have it in my mind that we're going to maybe watch portions of that today, but I think we'll save that for tomorrow because some of these jellyfish, they're quite nasty to human beings, and in certain cases, some can be fatal. But the problem with this is you can't see them, okay, for two reasons. One, they're transparent. Two, really, really, really tiny. That's right. Okay, so that's something that we'll pick up with tomorrow. We'll catch up to you next time.